Good evening or good afternoon, depending on where you are in the world, everybody. But welcome to another edition of 18 Minutes with 180 Markets. And, with us today, I always say that this is an interesting edition, but this is an incredibly interesting edition for you because we are with a true business icon, Stephen Schapera, Stephen of Crown Media. But more importantly, I think, is just the person who he is and his role as a influencer marketing guru. I don't know if that's, I hate that term, but that is the term that really is applicable. And with that introduction, Stephen, welcome to 18 Minutes with 180 Markets.
Thank you very much. Good to be here.
Excellent. Hey, Stephen, maybe, just start out, you have an unbelievable journey. Can you just start out from basically, how did you get from, schoolboy to where you are today in a nutshell, if you will?
Okay. Yeah, good question. Quite roundabout way, I guess. I started out as an average school child, schoolboy living in South Africa. I was absolutely mad about motorbikes, boats, anything that went fast. And I had a real inclination towards anything technical. So no surprise, I finished my high school and went to university to study engineering. The field of engineering that I ended up in was kind of a hybrid of materials science and aeronautical engineering. So I had a bursary with a company called Atlas Aircraft. So my first job as an engineer was building helicopter rotor blades for the military. I did that for exactly 6 weeks, and I realized that I was not going to be a good engineer. So I left engineering and I emigrated. I went to move to Australia, where I thought I'll do something completely different. And one of the things that really attracted me about changing from engineering was to do something outdoors. So I decided I would do something in agriculture, and the part of agriculture that I was especially interested in was grape growing and winemaking. I mean, most 21-year-olds like wine, so I thought that'd be a good idea. So I became involved with a family friend in a vineyard development. We planted the vineyards. Then I decided I need to learn more about winemaking. So I went to California for 3 years. I studied winemaking, came back to Australia and set up a winery, which at the time was, in kind of typical Stephen Schapera fashion, it was kind of different. And I think different in a valued way. The big difference was that I decided the Australian market was a very competitive place, and I couldn't see any point in trying to sell all of my wines at a very high price in Australia. So I was going to take my wines overseas to a market where I knew I could get the price, but I would be able to sell large volumes. So I was one of the first Australian wine producers to sell wine into Japan and Korea and other Asian countries. So that got me into the wine business, pursued the wine business until about 1995, when I sold the wine business and decided to go out on my own. So the wine business was a partnership, but I decided to go out on my own. Did that for 5 years in diversified horticulture. So I was doing everything from breeding cattle to growing watermelons under a branded name called Royden Park. I had a nursery operation, just intensive horticulture. And then sold that business to start a cosmetic business. And people have often asked me, what was it that attracted you to cosmetics? Hey, I was, at a stage in my life, I was still single. I'd spent the last 20 odd years surrounded by fat men and tractors, and the idea of getting into the cosmetic business and being surrounded by beautiful women and photographers and whatever, it was a no-brainer. I started a cosmetic business with a Perth makeup artist, and we started a business called Becca Cosmetics. We started it we actually launched it in 2001, and we built it up to the point where it was trading across about 35 countries, a significant international brand in its space. And in 2016, we sold it to the Estee Lauder Corporation, and it was a substantial exit. It was the press spoke about it as one of the 10 biggest beauty deals of 2016, and it was in excess of 300 million Australian dollars, so a pretty sizable exit, and that then set me off on another path, where instead of starting businesses from scratch, I probably became more interested in scaling businesses that already had some traction. One of the businesses that caught my attention was a German brand, a German business that was at that stage only about just over a year old, and it was called Invincible Brands. And Invincible Brands is a business that was set up by two young guys who wanted to create an influencer marketing business. And I invested into that business and have been on the board and very active in that business. So I guess that's what attracted me to the influencer marketing space.
Yeah, and maybe you can share with the audience, if they're not so aware, I can't think of any industry besides cosmetics, I said, it's been so heavily changed by influencer marketing to the point where it's just unbelievable. And I said, the seminal event probably was the recent, Kylie Jenner $1 billion deal. But you were really one of the pioneers to get in very early on in influencer marketing for cosmetics. Can you just share that experience with the audience?
Yeah. In fact, we certainly were a pioneer. I mean, Becca was probably not the first, but it was one of the first, and I would say probably one of the first three to actually utilize what are today referred to as influencers to help drive product. The classic example is Becca had a product that it collaborated with an influencer by the name of Jaclyn Hill. And we did the collaboration on July the 4th, 2015. That's American Independence Day. Yeah. And the idea was that we would launch the product at 8 a.m. It would be a digital launch on the Sephora website. Only. It would be exclusive to Sephora website, and we would launch it at 8 a.m. We did. We sold 25,000 units in the first 20 minutes. By 11 o'clock that morning, we'd sold $2.2 million worth of product. And this wasn't an inexpensive product. It was $38 per unit, and which is a high price for a cosmetic. It was, it's written up in textbooks of the day, and it was featured in WWD, which is the industry magazine, and so on. There's no question, was the most successful collaboration at the time, and could well be, even to this day, could well be one of the most successful. So that was kind of how we cut our teeth on it, and that's what got me interested in influencer marketing. But I want to just point something out to you today. You'd be quite surprised that today, it's not just cosmetics that are being sold using influencers. You will find that things as obscure as air conditioning units will in fact be sold by influencers. Now you might say, how is that even possible? I'll tell you how it's possible. What they do is an air conditioning manufacturer will put on a webinar where they'll get together some industry experts on the engineering of air conditioning and fluid mechanics and thermodynamics, yada, yada, yada. And they'll have one professor of air conditioning from MIT University, and he will deliver his lecture. And in the course of his lecture, he will talk about the Acme brand of air conditioning and how it's the most efficient air conditioning unit, and so on and so forth.
Right.
And so that is an influencer selling air conditioning units. So it's actually now everywhere. Right.
And I suppose, turning that to the next chapter of your life and, frankly, the listed chapter, if you will, Crown Media, maybe if you could just touch a bit about the history of how did you get involved into the business and what did you see? Because I think it's a lot more than just bringing your capital to the business. I think it's also bringing in your expertise.
Yeah, I think I've spent all my life starting my own businesses with my own money, and bringing in other people alongside me, but still keeping it private and relatively tight. And I've been doing that for, or my working life. I mean, my whole working life, it was always in that environment. And then probably in 2018 or thereabouts, I started to think more about publicly listed companies. I have a fairly extensive network of people that I've interacted with over the years, and many of them
Sure.
have been involved in public companies, big public companies, and often had offered me, had asked me to join them in some activity or whatever. But I was never really attracted to it. However, in 2017, I became involved in a Perth, a publicly listed company in Perth, which was a technology company, a medical technology company, and I felt that I could really add value to what they were doing, and it was that being able to add value that attracted me to the activity. When I became alerted to crowd media, I looked at it and I could see where it had been, and I could see that it needed to adapt to a changed environment. I knew that I had access to the expertise. I mean, you said early on in our introduction, you referred to me as an influencer marketing guru. I'm definitely not an influencer marketing guru. I'm somebody who's very knowledgeable about influencer marketing, and I've been fortunate enough to surround myself by some of the smartest influencer marketing people on the planet. No question. When I say on the planet, I'm not using that as a marketing term. It's actually just simply the fact. So it's having those people around me. And when the crowd media, when I was allergic to crowd media, I went to them and I said, guys, let's have a look at this business and see whether the technology that they're sitting on, whether it would work for us. And we had a look at it. The two founders from Invincible Brands, plus their COO, CFO, plus their another CFO of theirs. We all had a look, and when they said to me, "We really like what these guys are doing. We'd actually write a check." At that point, I said, "That's exactly what I wanted to hear." And our view was, and still is, that crowd media is sitting on technology that they don't know how valuable it is, and it's particularly the technology that resides in what they call Q&A, question and answer. One person might think that just means chatbot technology, but there's way more to it than just a chatbot. It's the ability to automate a conversation. And the latest trend, or the strongest trend that we're seeing right now in influencer marketing, is where you shift it to what we call conversational commerce. Actually a dialogue between the influencer and let's call it the consumer. And so that's where we're taking crowd. That's the holy grail.
Yeah, and I can't think of, just to your point before, that it's not just your capital, it's your expertise, but also I think what's interesting is already we're seeing, quite a significant financial improvement in the business. The business has been a bit patchy in the past, but I mean, we could already see and I guess my question is, does this come back to your business background? Like, it's all well and good to have a good product and a good marketing strategy, but you have to obviously look at the books as well. And you've really gotten that EBITDA line to come up. Do you maybe want to just share with the audience your thoughts about it?
Yeah, look, I don't want to generalize and say that all entrepreneurs know how to manage finances. That definitely wouldn't be the case. But I can tell you that when you've always run a business with your own money, trust me, you know how to manage finances, because otherwise you can't pay the rent. So, one of the first things that I did at Crowd was to get an agreement from management that we're going to be doing some serious, call it cost restructuring, which we did. And Robert Quant, who is ex-CFO, COO from Invincible Brands, and who joined alongside me in this investment and is on the board, he has worked with Dom and management to cut those costs. So, we've moved the business from a loss position. Don't quote me on these numbers, but I think 2 years ago, the company had losses of, I don't know, 16 or $20 million, something absurdly high. Then I think it came down to about 4 million or something like that. So again, in the millions. And within the space of a handful of months, we turned that around, because we came in September. By January this year, January had an underlying EBITDA, a positive underlying EBITDA. Likewise, February, likewise, March, likewise, April. May will probably get very close.
Sure.
It might be slightly under. I'm not worried about it. June will definitely be positive again. So we've kind of turned the tanker around. And at the same time improving the agility and the mobility of the company. So often, it's often easy to cut costs. You can, I don't know, get rid of some office space or stop paying people or just make large scale redundancies. We haven't done that. We've actually improved the business at the same time. But the question is going forward, what's the strategy? The strategy isn't to make the company profitable by cutting costs. The strategy is to make the company profitable by making it nimble, lean, efficient. And the biggest component in making that happen is to shift the business from being a corporation or corporate type managed business to an entrepreneurial business. So you've got myself in there on the board. I'm an entrepreneur. I don't like the word entrepreneur, but that's what I am. Robert Quant, exact same story. I mean, the guy was locked up in consulting with some of the biggest consulting firms in the world. He's worked on billion-euro projects, while still being in his 30s, I guess. But he's an entrepreneur at heart. Dom, again, also entrepreneur. Everybody's an entrepreneur now. So I'm really, really happy with the way we've rebuilt the business. And now the thing is to take it forward and execute the plan. And the plan is crystal clear to those on my side of the desk.
Right, which is to expand your influence. Well, maybe I'd love to hear it in your words about how to expand that influencer base over the next, let's call it, year to 2 years.
Okay, so the first thing is, let me tell you how the cosmetic industry works, and consumers don't like to hear this. If you imagine a cosmetic that sells for $30, it costs $3 to produce. So it's about 1 to 10. Okay.
Right.
So I'm used to selling products that cost me $3 to make and selling them at 30. So when someone comes to me and says, if you run a campaign for me and it's €100,000 campaign, you can keep 2,500 of it. That's of no interest to me. And that's what Crowd Media was doing. Crowd Media was doing influencer marketing for other people, for other brands, and making no money doing it, because that's just the nature of the industry. It's highly competitive, and you're just like an advertising agency, and you work on a small margin of 2.5% or 3.5% or 4%. Okay, I need to work on margins of 75%. That's what I'm used to. So the only way we can do that is either to stop running campaigns for other people, and to start selling products that we either own or part own, or are at least strategically aligned with, so that we're getting a big piece of the pie. Right. And so the first thing we did was we stopped running campaigns for some of the biggest companies in the world. We stopped running campaigns for Nespresso, Maybelline, L'Oreal, N26, Foreo. I mean, I can give you a list as long as our arm. Stopped running campaigns, and we instead began to pull in brands that I have been able to secure, or Robert have been able to secure for the company. The first one was I Am Camus, which is a really lovely jewelry bracelet, kind of cool leatherwear brand from Invincible Brands, and we've been selling that, and it's been going very nicely. It'll take some time to build. That's the nature of the beast, but we're making healthy margins, and it's a business with a good future. I also brought in London Labs, which is a London Labs skincare for hair. You and I, it's not as attractive for you and I because we're both going bald. But for people, women especially with an abundance of hair, the concept of skincare for hair is a really good one. And so Crowd Media have been driving that business through influencer marketing. Again, it's not an easy business to do. But if you know what you're doing and you're prepared to give it the time, you can build that business into something quite serious. And we're getting some good traction in the marketplace with that. And again, you're talking about margins that are of the order of 75%. Okay. Right. We've added to that another brand which I was able to introduce to Dom, called Kin Living, which is a home cleaning products. very opportune at the moment, but actually I've been using them in my home for years, 2 years at least, and it's the best there is. It's slightly expensive, but it's a beautiful product. It's all natural, non-toxic, et cetera, et cetera. And so we're distributing their products digitally in Europe. We have also just announced an alliance or an agreement with the Vital Group, which is it's a substantial family-owned business here in the UK. It's one of the three biggest players in the baby space in the UK, and that's a big market. But it's got a string of other products in their portfolio, some really strong brands that we think have got a great digital future. So we'll be working with them. The cloth is cut slightly differently than the normal arrangement, but we'll be working with them and working on really healthy margins.
Right. Hey, Stephen, what I love about the story, I say in summation, is that there's so many ways to win. You've got the trend is your friend as far as being influencer marketing. You've got the right management team in place, and now you've also got the cost control. I mean, it just really, it's flabbergasting, I guess, is the best description of it. And Stephen, with that, I really appreciate your time. Is there anything in closing that you'd like to share with the audience?
There's not, only other than look. There's lots of people who have great ideas. The essence is who can convert the idea into reality. I think I've put together a team that has a proven record in converting ideas and concepts into reality, and there's a lot more to come. I've put a very substantial amount of my own money into this business, as have the founders of Invincible Brands and the others. We're going to make this into $1 billion business. Otherwise, we don't think we'll have been successful. So you either back that or you don't.
With that, I love it, Stephen. Thank you very much for your time.
Great. Bye. Nice to meet you. Thank you so much. Thank you.